I'm Mark Krikorian, Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies. And much of the debate over immigration policy, really everywhere but among Republicans in particular, has been premised on this idea that only by embracing a policy of ever more expansive immigration can the Republican Party or conservatism more generally remain electorally viable. Now, there's some debate, I think, whether that's a sound argument, given the fact that Democrats have been giving Republicans the same advice, essentially how to beat them. So, you might want to take it. We probably ought to take it with a grain of salt, and yet I think there is a substantive issue we need to grapple with. Now, the Center for Immigration Studies isn't a partisan organization. We've got lots of Republicans who really hate our guts as much as the Democrats do. But the central place of this question of the immigrant vote, of the Hispanic vote, which overlaps, it's not the same thing, but it's related, in immigration policy debates mean this really is an issue worth some in-depth discussion. And I think the central question is, can conservatism in the American sense of the word, small government, social traditionalism, and military strength, and the Republican Party as the vehicle, however flawed, for such views, can conservatism survive the continued and uninterrupted flow of large numbers of future immigrants, survive as a politically viable force? Those on the left clearly answer no and consistently back up that view with their policy preferences. I mean, the left is almost monolithic in its support for continued mass immigration, and often for explicitly political reasons. Before we get to some of our speakers, let me read you a couple of choice nuggets. Eliseo Medina, the vice president of the SEIU and honorary chairman of the Democratic Socialists of America, said quite explicitly that immigration was the key to progressive victories in the future. They will solidify and expand the progressive coalition in the future. We reform the immigration laws that puts 12 million people on the path to citizenship and eventually voters. And he went on and on in this vein. Barney Frank earlier, again, was frank about this, where he said obviously that immigration is, quote, bad for blue collars, unquote, but that immigration will then help elect Democratic majorities and strengthen unions and be able to supposedly negate the negative effect of immigration on blue-collar workers. In other words, the premise, the basic idea there is that immigration will, in fact, solidify the left in the future. And finally, I wanted to read a couple of quotes from Roy Teixeira, who sends his regrets. He was going to come and then had to back out because of a conflict. But in a report he wrote a couple months ago for the Center for American Progress, entitled Demographic Change and the Future of Parties, he was quite frank, I think, in the effects that mass immigration has for the left, and said basically that increasing the percentage of specifically Hispanics he focused on, increasing the percentage of Hispanics in the electorate is good for the left. Quote, they are as strong or stronger in their support for active government, the safety net, and generous government service provisions, unquote. He said in contradiction to this idea that immigration is sort of a vitamin B shot for traditional values, something Frank Fukuyama and others have repeatedly talked about, that Hispanics overall are not nearly as socially as conservative as many believe. And this is repeatedly borne out by actual research as opposed to anecdote. And that the bottom line is that, he says, quote, the Republican Party, quote, must quite simply become less conservative, unquote, if it's going to survive. And that's really, I think, the question that we're going to discuss is not so much, and maybe we will or won't, there may be some disagreement, but not so much whether the Republican Party will survive, because I don't think there's much doubt about that. But the question is, will conservatism survive in the modern American sense, and the Republican Party as a vehicle for that? So let me move to our three speakers who are eminently qualified to talk about this. The first is Jim Gimpel, who wrote the paper we have out there on this issue and has written repeatedly on this issue of immigration and its effect on political and electoral outcomes. He's a professor at University of Maryland, College Park. Then David Frum will speak, the editor of Frum Forum and author of Comeback, a book on how conservatism can win again. I think that was the subhead. And finally, Ramesh Ponnuru, senior editor at National Review, who has likewise written and spoken extensively on this.